I'm just like to make the point that we're very fortunate that His Majesty has allowed us to use Buckingham Palace for this event.
The order did not come with a warning, a negotiation, or even a courteous request. It arrived at the late Queen's private holiday estate, carrying Princess Anne's signature and a deadline that left no room for resistance. Camilla's son had been instructed to leave the property immediately. By sunset, his access would be cancelled, his belongings removed, and the gates closed behind him. This was not a misunderstanding. It was a royal expulsion. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Tom Parker Bowles stood in the morning room with the document trembling in his hands. He had been staying there under an arrangement approved through Camilla's household, though he held no formal royal role and had no inherited claim to the property. The estate was no ordinary residence. It was a secluded family refuge kept apart from the Crown's public homes and protected by personal rules written for the late Queen's private use. Tom read the final paragraph again. Princess Anne had ordered him to leave before nightfall, surrender every key, return his access card, and give up all household privileges. The removal order canceled his right to remain. He lowered the page and asked the senior steward whether his mother had been informed. The man did not answer. That silence struck harder than any accusation. Camilla received the news during breakfast. She froze with her teacup raised, then set it down so carefully that the restraint felt more dangerous than anger. Anne had acted without warning her, consulting Charles, or giving her son a graceful exit. The Queen Consort understood the stakes. This was not only about Tom. It challenged whether her household could grant access inside spaces governed by the late monarch's private wishes. Anne felt no triumph. She had signed the order because the late Queen's written conditions had been breached, and those conditions controlled who could occupy the estate. The document did not explain it. It referred only to a protected instruction held outside palace records, meaning Camilla may never have seen the rule now being used against her son. Then Tom noticed the time beneath Anne's signature, 6 o'clock. The locks would be changed at that hour. The decision had been prepared, leaving no room for delay, appeal, or compromise. He turned toward the door, then stopped. A second envelope rested beneath the removal papers. It carried Camilla's name and the late Queen's private insignia, a personal mark identifying confidential family instructions. Tom had been ordered out, but the true shock was waiting inside the envelope that Anne had reserved for his mother. To the public, the confrontation appeared to be about access to a country estate. Inside the family, it was far more personal. Tom Parker Bowles saw the removal as a deliberate humiliation. Camilla saw it as an attack on her place beside the king. Princess Anne saw something else entirely, a boundary drawn by her late mother that had been quietly crossed. 3 people entered the conflict carrying different loyalties, and none of them intended to retreat. Tom had spent years moving close to royal life without ever truly belonging to its formal structure. He was Camilla's adult son, welcomed through personal permission rather than constitutional standing, meaning his access depended entirely on who allowed it. That distinction now mattered. The estate had offered privacy, comfort, and the quiet protection of family influence. Anne's order stripped all 3 away in a single morning. Tom entered the estate library and called his mother. His voice remained controlled, but the strain beneath it was impossible to hide. He asked whether she had known the Princess Royal intended to remove him. Anne's title referred to the monarch's senior working sister, but inside the family it carried something deeper. She was the one trusted to protect the late Queen's private wishes. Camilla did not answer immediately. Her silence gave him the truth before her words did. Camilla finally promised she would stop the eviction. She told her son not to leave, not yet, and assured him that Charles would understand what this humiliation meant. But once the call ended, the Queen Consort remained seated alone. She knew the king might already have accepted Anne's decision, and that fear cut deeper than the order itself. Tom was not only losing access, she was losing proof that her family had a secure place within royal life. Anne moved in another direction. She met the senior steward privately and asked whether any rooms, cabinets, or personal papers had been accessed during Tom's stay. Her questions were calm, but they carried the weight of suspicion. The steward hesitated before confirming that the late Queen's locked writing room had been opened twice under authority from Camilla's household. The admission changed everything. Anne placed both hands on his desk and asked who had issued the instruction. The steward named Camilla's private secretary. A private secretary is the senior aide who manages official correspondence, decisions, and sensitive household business. The princess showed no visible reaction, yet her stillness made the moment colder. Tom believed he was being punished for occupying the estate. Anne now knew the truth ran deeper. A room her mother had ordered sealed after death had been opened without permission, and no inventory explained what anyone had searched for inside. The estate was no longer merely a holiday retreat. It had become the site of a breach Anne believed could never be forgiven. The confrontation had not begun with Anne's signature. It began 3 weeks earlier, after midnight, when a key turned inside a door that had remained sealed since the late Queen's final visit. No ceremony marked the moment. No senior royal stood witness. Only a household aide, Tom Parker Bowles, and a private instruction from Camilla's office broke the silence. By morning, the room was locked again. But one object had been moved, and Anne would soon discover it. Tom paused at the threshold. The writing room held the late Queen's personal correspondence, handwritten estate instructions, family photographs, and private records kept outside the royal archives. Those archives were the official collection preserving documents of national and royal importance. But this room contained something more intimate. The monarch's private thoughts, guarded from public and palace scrutiny alike. Tom asked whether Princess Anne had approved the search. The household aide answered that Camilla's private secretary had authorized it because they needed an old guest register for an upcoming family gathering. The explanation sounded simple, yet it did not settle his unease. Anne had been named custodian of the room after her mother's death, meaning she alone held written authority to approve entry and supervise any inspection. Tom hesitated again. He knew the Queen Consort's household carried influence, but influence was not the same as permission. The aide repeated that no further approval was required. Then the lock turned, and the sealed room opened. Days later, Anne entered alone. She noticed immediately that her mother's writing chair had been shifted. The movement seemed small, almost harmless, but it told her someone had searched the room rather than simply collected a register. Then she saw the empty space on the desk. The leather document case was gone. Anne knew what it contained. Her mother had stored the estate's personal occupancy rules inside it, including firm limits on non-royal relatives using the property. Those conditions mattered because the estate was a private family refuge, not a residence anyone could claim through marriage, friendship, or household authority. The security record deepened the damage. A corridor log placed Tom outside the room that night, making him the only member of Camilla's family directly linked to the unauthorized entry. Anne read the record twice, then looked toward the steward without speaking. She closed the writing room door, removed the key from the lock, and said quietly, "No one enters again." "Not until I know what was taken." Tom later insisted during a recorded private conversation that he had never touched the leather case, but he admitted something worse. He had seen another person carry it away. Anne now knew when the boundary had been crossed. What she still needed was the name of the person who had taken her mother's papers. The confrontation took place without cameras, courtiers, or ceremonial smiles. Anne waited outside the king's private sitting room, with the removal order in one hand and the late Queen's estate key in the other. Camilla arrived carrying the sealed envelope sent from the holiday property. Neither woman offered a greeting. Between them stood a son's humiliation, a missing document case, and the memory of a monarch whose final boundaries had been ignored. Camilla spoke first. She demanded that Princess Anne suspend Tom's removal until Charles reviewed the case, insisting that her son had entered the estate with permission from her household. The Princess Royal was the formal title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, but Anne's authority here came from something more personal. Her mother had trusted her to protect the estate after death. Camilla argued that Tom should not be publicly disgraced for obeying instructions he believed were valid. Anne refused to soften. She told the Queen Consort that no member of her staff had possessed the authority to open a sealed room or override the late Queen's written restrictions. The estate key in her hand was not ceremonial. It represented direct control over a private family property whose rules existed to protect memories, papers, and belongings from influence inside the palace. Camilla's restraint finally cracked. She accused Anne of using her mother's memory to punish a family that had never been fully accepted. The princess answered without raising her voice. The punishment, she said, had begun the moment private instructions were treated as optional. Tom entered before either woman could continue. He faced Anne and asked whether she truly believed he had stolen from the late Queen. She studied him for several seconds before answering. She did not accuse him of taking the case. She accused him of helping someone enter a room they had no right to open. Camilla stepped between them. She placed the sealed envelope on a side table and ordered Anne to withdraw the removal notice. The princess set the estate key beside it and refused. The two objects rested together like opposing verdicts. Tom then broke his silence through a recorded private account given to Anne. He admitted that he had seen Camilla's private secretary carry the missing leather case from the writing room and place it inside a red dispatch bag, a locked case used to transport sensitive royal documents. Camilla turned toward her son in shock. Her reaction exposed something Anne had not expected. The queen consort had not known the case had been taken. Anne pushed the envelope toward her. Camilla broke the seal, read the first lines, and lost color. The late queen's message was absolute. Unauthorized access required the immediate removal not only of the person who entered, but of everyone who had benefited from the breach. The argument had begun over Tom, yet the late queen's words now placed Camilla's own access to the estate in danger. Power inside the monarchy does not always belong to the person wearing the crown. Sometimes it rests in a signature made years earlier, a private trust established in silence, or a final instruction entrusted to the one child least likely to bend. The late queen had anticipated conflict over her private estate. She had not left control to Charles, Camilla, or the palace household. She had left it to Anne. Charles read the trust summary without speaking. A private family trust is a legal arrangement that holds property under fixed instructions, rather than placing it directly under the monarch's personal control. That distinction now carried enormous weight. The estate was not a crown residence, meaning it did not automatically belong to the reigning sovereign. His mother had placed it beyond easy influence, and named Princess Anne as its principal guardian. Charles removed his glasses and looked again at the final page. He still held ceremonial authority as head of the family, but he could not overturn the estate's occupancy rules without Anne and two independent trustees agreeing. Those trustees were neutral guardians appointed to enforce the late queen's written conditions. The king understood what his mother had done. She had prevented any future monarch from using the property as a reward, a favor, or a bargaining tool within a marriage. Camilla entered with one request. She asked him to intervene for Tom before the locks were changed and his removal became permanent. The queen consort insisted that her son had followed instructions from her household and should not carry the full punishment for another person's decision. Charles felt the pressure immediately. He wanted to protect his wife, yet he could not defend an arrangement created through the unauthorized opening of his mother's private room. He told Camilla that Tom's humiliation pained him, but the missing papers had changed the matter. She left without answering, and he did not call her back. Charles remained alone. He pressed his thumb against the late queen's signature and stared at it, as though it might offer mercy. None came. The king was being forced to choose between the woman beside him and the boundary his mother had created before death. Then the missing leather case was found. A security search recovered it from a locked cabinet inside Camilla's administrative office. Its location proved that someone had removed it from the estate and carried it into the palace. Inside lay a handwritten clause stating that no occupant could use the property to access personal correspondence, family records, or undisclosed inheritance instructions. Anne acted at once. She convened the trustees by telephone, read the clause aloud, and secured unanimous support for Tom's immediate removal. The decision went further. The trustees authorized a review of every privilege approved through Camilla's household. Tom's departure was now irreversible, but the investigation had begun to move directly toward the queen consort's inner circle. At 6 o'clock, the estate gates closed exactly as Anne had ordered. There was no royal convoy, no farewell gathering, and no private extension granted out of sympathy. Tom Parker Bowles left with 2 suitcases, a garment bag, and the knowledge that every member of the household had watched him surrender his keys. For Camilla, the image was unbearable. For Anne, it was the price of enforcing a promise. Tom felt the order become real when the senior steward held out his hand. His access pass had already been canceled, his guest privileges revoked, and his name removed from the approved residence list. That list was the official record of people allowed to stay at the private estate. Once his name disappeared, personal connections no longer mattered. He had no right to enter, sleep there, or even return for forgotten belongings without fresh permission. Tom placed the estate key into the steward's palm and paused. For one painful second, he seemed to expect someone to appear with a final reprieve. No one came. He looked away, gathered the last of his things, and walked toward the waiting car without speaking. Anne had already issued a second instruction. Any future request from Camilla's office would require direct approval from her or the trustees before anyone entered the property. The trustees were independent guardians responsible for enforcing the late Queen's conditions. The new rule mattered because it ended the quiet influence Camilla's household had once exercised over the estate. Camilla watched a private recording of her son's departure inside her sitting room. She saw Tom surrender the key, saw him hesitate, and then saw the gates close behind him. The Queen consort began to cry. Her grief was not only for the humiliation he had suffered. It came from the deeper wound of knowing she had promised protection and failed to provide it. Charles entered without ceremony. He watched several seconds of the recording, then switched it off. The king told her quietly that defending Tom could not mean pretending the late Queen's study had never been opened. Camilla turned away, but he remained beside her, caught between sympathy and a truth neither of them could escape. Anne soon learned the recovered leather case contained more than occupancy rules. It held an inventory of personal items still stored at the estate, along with sealed correspondence addressed separately to her, William, and Charles. One envelope carried a strict instruction: open only if the estate's privacy was breached. Anne received it in her office and broke the wax seal. She stopped halfway through the letter, shaken by her mother's warning. The message did not condemn Camilla. Instead, it asked whether loyalty meant protecting people from pain or protecting the rules that held the family together. For the first time since issuing the order, Anne questioned not whether she was legally right, but what her decision might cost them all. The turning point did not happen in a council chamber. It came the next morning in a small drawing room with no aides, no secretaries, and no documents placed between them. Tom had requested one final meeting before leaving the royal estate system entirely. Anne agreed on one condition: he would speak without protecting his mother, and she would listen without treating him as an extension of Camilla. For the first time, they faced each other simply as two wounded members of one family. Tom arrived carrying nothing except the canceled access card he had surrendered after his removal. The meeting took place at a neutral family residence, far from the estate and the palace offices that had turned every word into a question of authority. He wanted Anne to understand why he had entered the late Queen's writing room, even if the explanation could not save him. Tom revealed the reason through a private recorded conversation made for the family file. Camilla's secretary had told him that the missing guest register contained proof his mother had once been personally welcomed to the estate by the late Queen. A family file was a confidential record kept for private disputes and internal decisions, not for public release. He believed that one entry might finally silence years of doubt. Tom admitted the truth without defending it. Camilla had spent years feeling tolerated rather than fully accepted, and her son had watched that insecurity deepen behind closed doors. He wanted to find something written in the late monarch's own hand that proved she had belonged there. To him, the search had begun as an act of loyalty. To Anne, it had become a violation. Anne felt her anger soften, but she did not excuse him. She told Tom that love could become dangerous when it allowed someone to cross another person's final boundary. His motive explained the choice. It did not erase the damage. Tom placed the canceled access card on the table and apologized without qualification. He accepted that he would never return to the estate. Then he disclosed something Camilla had not known. Her secretary removed the leather case after finding references to private inheritance instructions inside the guest register. Anne confirmed that the aid had been dismissed and permanently barred from every property controlled by the late Queen's trust. The ban meant the former secretary could no longer enter, work within, or request access to those family estates. Anne then gave Tom one promise. She would not reverse his removal, but she would publicly clarify that he had never been accused of theft and had cooperated once confronted. The punishment would remain, yet his name would not carry a crime he had not committed. Tom accepted the consequence, leaving Anne and Camilla to decide whether the family would survive the wound their loyalties had created. By morning, the private order had become a national spectacle. Broadcasters interrupted regular programming, newspapers rebuilt their front pages, and crowds gathered outside royal gates searching for clues in every arriving car. Yet one image defined the entire crisis: Tom Parker Bowles, standing beside a dark vehicle outside the late Queen's estate, holding a single leather suitcase while the gates closed behind him. It looked less like a departure than a verdict. The palace moved quickly. It released a concise statement confirming that occupancy at the private estate had been reviewed and that Princess Anne had acted under authority granted by the late Queen's trust. A royal trust is a private legal arrangement used to protect property and enforce written family conditions. The statement mattered because it made one point impossible to ignore. Anne had not acted on impulse. She had acted within powers her mother had deliberately left behind. The country divided almost instantly. Some commentators praised the Princess Royal as the only person willing to defend the monarch's private boundaries. Others condemned Tom's removal as a family punishment made painfully public. He was not a working royal, yet he had become the face of a battle over influence, inheritance, and belonging. One newspaper captured the mood with brutal simplicity. Its front page showed the estate gates closing beneath the headline, "Anne draws the line," while Tom stood alone beyond the ironwork. The image spread across television panels and online reports within minutes. It reduced a complicated family conflict to one unforgettable message: access had ended. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered as a broadcaster described the crisis as a battle over who may claim the late Queen's private legacy. Buckingham Palace is the monarch's principal official residence and the public symbol of royal authority. That location gave the words extra force. The dispute was private, but the judgment had moved into the heart of the monarchy's public identity. Camilla saw the front page during breakfast. She folded it inward to hide her son's photograph and asked that no more newspapers be brought into her rooms. The Queen Consort had fought to protect Tom, but now she could not shield him from becoming a national symbol of rejection. Anne watched the same coverage with visible discomfort. She had intended to protect her mother's privacy, not expose another family member to humiliation. The distinction mattered to her, even if the public could no longer see it. The palace then confirmed that no criminal accusation existed against Tom. Charles authorized a second statement, declaring that the late Queen's private instructions would remain binding. The King's decision protected Tom's name while publicly endorsing Anne's order. The world had delivered its judgment, but the final verdict still belonged to the two women standing on opposite sides of the late Queen's boundary. The crisis ended where it had begun, with a key, a private estate, and the memory of a woman no longer present to defend her wishes. Tom would not return. The removal order would not be withdrawn. Yet the final meeting between Anne and Camilla was not a victory celebration or another confrontation. It was a reckoning between two women who understood that protecting family sometimes meant refusing the people they loved most. Anne met Camilla privately and confirmed what neither woman could avoid any longer. Tom's removal was permanent, under the late Queen's written conditions. Those conditions were binding rules governing who could enter, stay at, or benefit from the estate. No appeal would restore his access, but no further action would be taken against him. He had admitted his role, cooperated fully, and had not removed the missing document case. Camilla did not hide her pain. She told Princess Anne that the manner of the eviction had humiliated her son before the household and the country. The princess accepted that the decision had caused real suffering, but she did not apologize for enforcing it. Tom had been wounded by the order, yet the boundary had already been broken before she acted. Anne then admitted why she had moved with such force. Every unauthorized key, every opened room, and every missing paper had made her feel as though her mother was being erased, piece by piece. The estate was not merely property. It carried the late monarch's private memories, and losing control of it felt like losing her all over again. Camilla reached into her handbag and removed a spare estate key. She placed it in Anne's palm and promised that neither she nor her family would request private access again. The Queen Consort's surrender was not theatrical. It was quiet, painful, and final. Anne answered with a gesture of her own. She handed Camilla a complete copy of the late Queen's estate instructions, ending the secrecy that had allowed suspicion to grow between them. Charles later confirmed through a documented palace statement that the property would remain a protected family memorial. The trust, a legal arrangement preserving the estate under fixed rules, would never allow it to become a reward granted through marriage, favor, or influence. Tom accepted the decision. Camilla stopped challenging it. Anne publicly clarified that the removal defended a boundary rather than condemned a man. The verdict was unmistakable. Proximity to the crown could not replace lawful authority, and personal loyalty could not erase the monarch's final wishes. Anne had not acted to destroy Camilla's place. She had acted to preserve a principle. Royal property may carry affection, memory, and privilege, but it can never belong to whoever reaches it first. The gates remained closed, the order remained in force, and the late Queen's final boundary stood intact, painful, permanent, and respected at last. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.